Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. We're very lucky to have with us today Lucy Bullock Sieger and Iain Ward to discuss our topic for February in our Renewable Supporter Speaker Series, Agrivoltaics Supporting Farmer-Focused Solar. So thank you all for attending. I'm Len Luca. I'm the Renewables Outreach Coordinator for New Yorkers for Clean Power. This speaker series provides a venue where people statewide can meet each other, connect, share information and strategies, and gain strength from hearing about successes in New York's renewable space. Please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Please include where you're from and what interests you about agrivoltaics. So agrivoltaics is one of the hottest topics for our interest in our groups. This has been something that you've all expressed to me is an enduring interest, and I appreciate you giving me that kind of feedback. It's a mutually supportive collaboration that meets our statewide need for affordable clean energy and also fulfills the landowner's dedication to active farming and soil regeneration. A win-win like this offers such a bright future. So we're really lucky to have with us two amazing guests who will be discussing farmer-focused solar. During the presentations, please enter your questions in the chat. We'll take questions at the end of both presentations. We'll stop the recording before we start the Q&A, but if we don't get to the questions, to get to everyone's questions, we can follow up with the Q&A document for the people who registered. So I'd like to start by introducing our two guests, and Lorenzo is going to drop the two links in the chat. So Lucy is from Lightstar. Lucy Bullock Sieger is the VP of Strategy from Lightstar Renewables. That's a member of NYSEIA, the New York Solar Energy Industrial Association. And Lucy has over a decade working in land use, energy, and public health policy. We also have with us Iain Ward, founder of SolAg Services. SolAg is an innovative agrivoltaic service provider working in New York and across the Northeast. Iain is also faculty with American Farmland Trust on a DOE-funded farmer technical assistance collaboration with Rutgers Agrivoltaics Program in New Jersey. So both Lucy and Iain are versed in state and federal level policy mechanisms to support agrivoltaics. Thank you both so much for being here. Lucy, please tell us about your work with Lightstar Renewables.
Thank you so much, Len, and good to be with everybody. And I am a native daughter of Central New York, so it feels good to be speaking to a group of New Yorkers. Anybody from Manlius. I am born and raised there, though I live in Massachusetts now. All right, everybody can see my screen? Yes. All right. I am the Vice President of Strategy, which is policy, regulatory, and strategic initiatives, and agrivoltaics is one of those. So I am also the chair of the Solar and Farming Association, which I'll go over in a couple of seconds, but Iain is also on the board there. This is an industry-wide trade association that was formed over the summer at the behest of Senators Baldwin and Grassley, because we're now a large enough industry that we need our own association. So we're happy to be leading that effort. We were just in DC last week, and the good news is that everybody really likes agrivoltaics. So we're going to keep marching forward there. So a little bit about Lightstar, 1,200 megawatts of solar in development across 12 states. About 500 of that, it's probably more like half, are agrivoltaics projects, and more I'm seeing that percentage creep up literally every week. We see agrivoltaics to be a major advantage, and we've been working hard to provide and deliver really great high-quality agrivoltaic projects for the last 4 years. And our first two larger scale, community scale agrivoltaics projects are in New York. So I'm really happy to be talking to this group. So a little bit about the Solar and Farming Association. Policy is a huge driver for agrivoltaics and solar in general. So we see a big need for federal definitions and kind of lighting the way for farmers to get more technical assistance on these projects, because it is a new way of farming. We don't think that farmers can't figure it out, but they sure enough are owed and deserve the support of the federal USDA agencies to do that. So, and Chuck Grassley is a huge champion of that. And a lot of people are surprised by that, but he is dyed in the wool, early believer of agrivoltaics. Okay. And I like to start with the definition because we get asked that all the time. I talk about two things. What is agrivoltaics? Does it work? And how do you define it? And how are you going to remain in compliance? So we use the Baldwin-Grassley Protecting Future Farmland Act definition, and every state and sometimes counties, depending on where you live, have definitions of agriculture. And so we really wanted this to be broad enough so that it could also be applied to the state level. But two things I want to point out is that pollinators are not agrivoltaics. If you are not the agricultural operation that's integrated within the solar operation needs to produce meaningful revenue on that specific parcel for the farmer. And you can't produce meaningful revenue from that. And in New York State, the agricultural current use tax assessment rules say that you have to at least have $10,000 of revenue on that parcel to be enrolled in farmland tax assessment. So pollinators would not be that case. It's a little bit more complicated with grazing. Grazing for maintenance of an array is a form of agrivoltaics, but it doesn't qualify as for current use assessment under the New York rules. So they are very important partners of ours in terms of pushing for policy for agrivoltaics, but there's a difference because you need to be able to be tying the revenue from that flock to that specific parcel in order to qualify. But I could do a whole thing on that. So maybe that's a follow-up. It's not just New York and the Northeast. Agrivoltaics is everywhere. This map actually needs to be updated. There are arrays being designed in Arkansas, in Missouri, in Mississippi. We just had a conversation with Louisiana Farm Bureau. These are meaningful efforts across the country. And actually, Michigan, we have 2 urban agrivoltaic arrays that we're developing, Lightstar is, for the city of Detroit. So stay tuned on that. There's lots going on. It's here. It's mainstream now, and we're pushing forward with it. All right, so what about New York? Where does New York stand on this? We've been talking with NYSERDA and New York policymakers about agrivoltaics for a long time. New York is a big state, but there's a lot of concentration of solar in specific areas, particularly the 5 megawatts or less in the central Hudson area. We know that people have been feeling the pressure there. As developers, we feel the pressure because that means that there's not a lot of interconnection. And so you'll start to see clusters of solar projects. And that's typically when we see pushback from solar arrays happen, is when people really start to see it and clustered together. So it's really important now that we push for agrivoltaics because it is that dual use of the land. And in New York, so the Agricultural Technical Working Group has an agrivoltaic specialist committee. I am a part of that. It was formed in 2022, and just the aim is to make sure that everybody has a clear view of the stakeholder knowledge of agrivoltaics and evaluating what the state can and should do to support it in general. So the biggest to date advancement in agrivoltaics, and we're happy to see this, and NYSERDA has been really wonderful to work with, is they've put out an agrivoltaics research and demonstration RFP. I'm proud to say that Lightstar has been awarded $1.1 million to research 2 of our sites, and I'll show you them down below. So more to come on that. Part of that is we're partnering with Solar Agricultural Services and also the American Farmland Trust. And AFT, one of the things that they do really, really well is they communicate findings and share information and data really well. So that's what they're going to be doing on our sites. So be on the lookout for tours coming in the next year or so of some of our sites. Okay, so what do we need on the local level? So we just did federal, we got to the state, And so how do towns and municipalities and counties really allow for agrivoltaics? So I'll step back. In 2021, we started engaging with the town of Montgomery and in Orange County, and they had a solar moratorium, but they also had wide open interconnection capacity within their town. There had been a gas plant that was slated to be open in their region that was canceled. And so, but they did the upgrades. And so they still had this capacity, and it's right near lines. It's so beautiful. And so they had put in their plan that they were going to allow for agrivoltaics, or explore at least agrivoltaics in their bylaws. And so we used this framework that I have here. So they needed a definition. They needed to ensure project remains in production. They needed a farm logistics plan as a part of the site plan approval process. New York State already has really clear construction guidelines for agricultural soils, so that's really good. Providing for the decommissioning of projects and a bond. Allowing for agricultural fencing, because this still is an agricultural operation, and then understanding the setbacks needed to make sure that we were expanding and allowing for enough room for the agricultural operation, because we need all of those setbacks to be able to turn the tractors, turn the implements, so that they can traverse the array in an efficient manner. So these are all the things that we integrated into the Town of Montgomery bylaws, and we've permitted one project already, and we have another one in permitting. Fingers crossed. I think it should go. And we're really excited about it. And those are the two projects that were awarded by NYSERDA. And again, I could do a whole presentation about why these are each important, but I do want to highlight again the definition and the compliance mechanism. And the site plan approval process is the compliance mechanism for agrivoltaics. When you have vegetation management, you on a standard array, that's usually mowing or maybe sheep, but for an agrivoltaics array, it's a farming operation. So if we are out of compliance, we probably need a growing season to come back into compliance. Maybe there was farmer secession, maybe there was extreme weather, maybe there was crop failure. There's so much more to it than just you need to cut the grass. So, but it's important because there's millions of dollars on the line for developers. If we are caught out of compliance, our investors will hold us to the fire. And certainly because we have incentives through the community solar program in New York, we could have serious problems and reputational issues and financial issues if we were to be out of compliance. So that's a big deal for us. So landowners and farmers, why this is different. This is a farm viability tool for landowners and farmers. So it's oftentimes there's landowners that are farmers, and then there's tenant farmers that lease from the landowners. And we love to work with the tenant farmers because we want to keep them on the property. We want them to have a viable operation. And a lot of the times, and Iain will talk a little bit more to this, is that this stipend that we pay them, because remember, this is vegetation management, and within the model of a solar developer, we are paying somebody to mow, but now we're paying somebody to farm. And so by doing that, you're increasing and strengthening the rural agricultural economy, and a lot of times increasing the viability of family farms, which we know is a big deal, especially in downstate New York in the Valley. So what do these projects look like? This is our one of our first project in Montgomery, and it's under construction right now. We're hoping, fingers crossed, that it's going to be completed the end of April, beginning of May, and hopefully we will have 1 year of kind of cover cropping to make sure the soil integrity remains for and adjusting for decompaction if there is any. And then the following year we'll have a really beautiful harvest. So we have hay here, and we have 2 acres of mixed vegetables, thanks to the NYSERDA grant there. So typically this is, the row spacing is 30 to 40 feet, depending on the capacity on the substation and the size of the parcel. The height is between 6 and 9 feet. Again, that depends. It's very site specific, but but really the width is what matters to get tractors and implements and harvest equipment through the arrays. So this is one of the newer, larger scale projects. So this is in Iowa State University, and they're growing all sorts of varieties: strawberries, broccoli, raspberries, and they saw an amazing crop this year. And they went from skeptical folks to true believers in a matter of one harvest. This is Jack's Solar Garden in Colorado. This is the longest operating commercial agrivoltaics array in the country. If you're really looking to get a field trip out to Colorado, that is one way to go and drink the Kool-Aid out there, because they are growing 25 plus varieties of crops out there, and they're successful enough to be doing a community supported agricultural operation. And cattle is the next frontier for agrivoltaics. And Lightstar, this is not our array, but we've designed arrays, and we're hoping to get some projects permitted over the next year and a half or so. Again, this is renderings of our Montgomery projects, and we're really proud. And I just want to underscore before I really wrap up is that agrivoltaics enabled solar to happen in this town. It was banned effectively. There was in the bylaws, there was no solar on prime farmland. And when you come prepared, you come with partners like American Farmland Trust and SolAg Agrivoltaics Services and Cornell and all of these folks. You really prove the case that this is going to be a meaningful project for the community. And you have to do it in the beginning. You can't do it as a form of public pressure. I know that there's, in the Copake example, they did not design that project as agrivoltaics. So it's very difficult to steer a large ship in the middle of a design process. So getting to people before they start to design, and it's really early, 5% of the project designed. Like, that's very early. They spend a lot of money to get that 5% design. So it's difficult to make them move. So, but it can be done. There are some examples of retrofitted agrivoltaic arrays in New York as well, up in near Watertown, actually. And it's very interesting to see. And I think that Cornell is involved in that as well. So this is the future of what we think is a viable option for family farms. And we're really proud that New York is our first foray into true agrivoltaics in the region. So with that, I will end and take any questions at this time. That was a lot of information, a lot of information.
A lot of information. Thank you so much. That was really exciting. That's really fantastic. I'm sure that we do have a lot of really good questions for you in the chat. We're going to reserve some time after Iain has a chance to speak. Ethan, if you're online, I was hoping we could highlight you for just a second before we turn to Iain. Ethan Winter. Great. I just wanted to thank you so much for helping arrange for Lucy and Iain to be with us today. Please say a few words about your wonderful work.
Thanks, everyone. I don't want to get in the run of the show here other than to say AFT has been developing a smart solar program, and we see agrivoltaics as a really important feature for farm viability. You heard Lucy mention that innovation in New York. And we really look forward to the conversation after Iain's presentation, another perspective of someone who's building a business in this space and helping to influence policy. I am working on a DOE proposal right now to develop technical assistance for farmers across the country and extension programs so that we can really scale this work around the country. So if anyone has questions about AFT's interest in this work, I did put a link in the chat and happy to chat later. Thank you, Len.
Thank you so much. Thanks again for connecting me with these two wonderful people. This is so much fun for a presentation. So let me just introduce you all to Iain and his work. As I mentioned earlier, he's the founder of SolAg Services, and that's an innovative agrivoltaic service provider working in New York, and also associated with American Farmland Trust on a DOE-funded grant that has already been allotted, and also works with the Rutgers Agrivoltaics Program. So, Iain, we're so glad to have you here. So lucky to be with you today.
It's an honor to be here. This is music to my ears that there's this many people that are interested in hearing what agrivoltaics is about, because it's solar done differently. And so the more people that we really understand what it is that we're talking about, the better. So honored to be here. I'm going to set my alarm here, so I'm talking for 15 minutes, because what I really like to do is have this be a dialogue conversation, because I think that's how the most learning occurs. I'm going to share my screen, just go through a quick presentation here, and that should work. Can everyone see my screen all right? All right. Yes, who am I? So Iain Ward, SolAg Agricultural Services. We've been working in the agricultural space for over 20 years, doing conservation planning, working with NRCS, working with government officials, NGOs like American Farmland Trust. And what we've been, while solar, we can talk intelligently about conventional solar because we were helping farmers negotiate their deals with solar developers 12, 15 years ago at the early onset of solar, and got to see things that now sort of make me not sleep well at night, which was cutting down lots of trees or taking, productive farm fields and sacrificing them. And I could justify it because it could, they're sacrificing a small part of the farm to save the rest of the farm. And I convinced myself that was the right thing until the SMART program came about in Massachusetts. And then we realized that there's an alternative. You can do both. So because of that, we started SolAg Agricultural Services. And as an environmental science as a background, USDA conservation planner, and a farmer and an advocate for farmers, we decided to take the NRCS conservation certification background and apply it to plans that we're doing on agricultural lands for solar developers. And why that's because as a beginning farmer myself, when I tried to buy farms in Massachusetts, and I'm not sure if you find this in New York, I'm sure there are parts of New York that fit this. This is the last thing that's left of the farm that I tried to buy. Silo Lane. That's it. There's 40 houses on this farm that I tried to buy. So as a beginning farmer, I can talk with you about the trials and tribulations of trying to secure the land, get access to the land, try to get financing to purchase the land. And solar plays a part in all of those things. For my personal take, I had to buy a wetland, and not everyone has active agricultural land that's a wetland. I bought a cranberry bog. That's how I got my fix in agriculture. And I farmed sheep and hogs and cows in the back land that was landlocked. But these are my boys here helping me scout out cranberries. And when we put all that information together about, agricultural background, and I still farm, I can talk intelligently about the trials and tribulations of trying to keep that farm, find, off-farm income. We created this sort of niche, and the desire is that SolAg Agricultural Services is a blueprint, and we create a blueprint for how to implement agrivoltaics, not just in New York, but across the country. And like, as Ethan said, we're sharing this information. It could be intellectual property, but for the sake of our collective good, we're sharing this information with groups like American Farmland Trust, so that children of farmers themselves, in each community that agrivoltaics plays a part, we can show how you can create another niche that aligns solar with farming. So what is it? Some of the brass tacks things that we do. We assist land acquisition agents with solar developers, because there's two different languages that are being spoken. There's an agricultural language and there's a solar language. And as of now, but for a few instances, it's been more of a transaction. And it's like, we have some money, will you enter into an agreement with us? And we take site control. In the case of agrivoltaics, it's not just site control. It's not just, here's landowner, we're going to pay you to explore your land and you get paid and that's it. That's no other involvement with you. When you're doing agrivoltaics, it is a full-on partnership really with that farmer for the long term, because it's not just a landowner, as Lucy alluded to. That's historically a landowner benefits from these solar arrays, but the farmer who 50% of the time was a tenant farmer that would otherwise get kicked off the land, in this case, we're encouraging them to be on the land. We do not want them to leave the land. We want their expertise. We want their expertise on the soil and how things grow to be utilized. So we work with those tenant farmers. We work with the landowners who are the farmers to do crop feasibility studies, to put together farm logistics plans that would then go before local planning boards. We attend the permit hearings with the farmers. The farmers end up being the best advocates for these projects because they're not being hit over the head saying this is something you must do. It's something that they want to do because it's a more certainty of a future. The next generation gets involved, and it's a wonderful thing to be exposed to. We support the investment in the finance, working with taking the agricultural knowledge, conveying it to solar developers, and having that be understood throughout the internal permitting process, the internal financing process, the construction process, and then afterwards, how do we know how these projects are performing if we don't report and plan for additional things? So that's part of what we do. And the bigger reason really why we do this is if we can take energy sector resources and combine them with agricultural sector know-how, and we can revitalize farm families and we can regenerate the soil that they're producing, because it's prime soil. We don't really need it to end up in rivers. We don't really need it to be extracted from. If we can contribute back to it, because there's innovation dollars. One of the other farmers I work with calls it innovation dollars. When there's dollars that are being paid to the farming entity that allows them to try different things, try different compost ideas, then we can regenerate the soils. And ultimately, that gets us back to nourishing people in our communities. And that's where the Renourish comes from. So if all this did was enhance access to farmland, like me as a beginning farmer, to take advantage of land that I couldn't otherwise access, or enhance the soil quality, or align with our rural communities, if all that happened was that, should we consider doing solar in a different way? And that's what agrivoltaics is. Just a couple examples to build upon what Lucy said in regards to some of the common questions I get from farmers, and I had them myself as a farmer under 5 different arrays of projects. Will equipment fit? Well, first off, is there light enough that goes through the panels? And yes, unequivocally, yes. There's different formats. We're talking about raising these up off the ground, making them single axis trackers, bifacial panels, which allow solar to come, you probably are aware of this, from the sky and be reflected off the ground. Those are things that are being experimented with now. They're being implemented and experimented. Not all light is the same. In photosynthetically active radiation, PAR, is something that plants use to photosynthesize. There's experiments being made with how do we retain the solar and provide the energy that the solar is looking to get and allow that light through the more beneficial light for photosynthesis. So the question about do things grow? Yes, unequivocally, things grow. The largest determining factor really is, will it grow too high to shade the panels? And that is a form of how wide the panels are and what you're growing. Equipment. I'm in this dump truck. People say, oh, you can't operate machinery under an array. Well, that's not true. You can, and heavy machinery. This is a colleague planting lettuce, broccoli being grown under the panels. Hay. Someone asked a question in the chat. Is hay considered agrivoltaic? Absolutely. The only reason why we're making the distinction between pollinators and everything else is largely because it's food related. Can you get honey from bees? Yes, you can. Are there many benefits from pollinator habitat? There is, unequivocally. However, from a are we producing food as we have historically looked at producing food, if it's hay, then it's going to feed livestock. If it's livestock themselves, if it's grain, soy, maybe cow corn, maybe 10, 12-foot corn is not going to be the right fit because of the shading of the panels, but soy is, and I'll show you that picture in a moment. Cattle, sheep are commonly used to graze arrays.
Okay.
That happens across the board anyway. I would love for that to be the mower of the new mowing norm is for sheep. But agrivoltaics is something in addition to sheep. And I'll tell you, being out in Illinois or Iowa or Maryland, they're like, yeah, we don't graze sheep, we graze cattle. So how do you do cattle? Well, there's multiple ways to do it. In this case, these are raised 10 feet off the ground. Some are experimenting with 8 feet off the ground, some 6.5 and locking the panels horizontal. So when the cows are underneath, there's different, that's what we're talking about. The innovation dollars, when you are helping to incentivize a farmer to be there, they will figure out how to manage the animals and livestock the best. This is specialty crops. This happens to be under cranberries. UMass is doing an experiment. This is one of the projects that I'm managing. This is Rutgers University growing different vegetable crops. And some people say about Jack's solar garden, we were with some representatives, Lucy and I were together. We showed them some pictures of Jack's solar garden, and those representatives, well-meaning, said, well, we don't garden here. We farm in this state, i.e. we grow soy just like this. And when you show them the picture, like, oh, you can do soy under the array. Like, yes, this is being experimented at Rutgers right now. So at the end of the day, the goal here was just to show you, give you a little background as to what folks in this new burgeoning industry are doing on the agricultural side to show that it is a legitimate way to proceed and a legitimate way to do solar in a different manner.
That is amazing. Thank you so very much. And thank you for leaving sufficient time for questions. So before we turn to questions, we're going to turn off the recording for a second. I thought that was what we were going to be doing at least. Let me try again.